I'm going to show you 4 options for sharpening kitchen knives, the 4 options that I would consider using. There are of course more options, but these are the 4 that I think are realistic for most home cooks. And at the end I will tell you which one I think is the best. Oh, and knife nerds, I love you, but this video is not for you. If you're the kind of person who gets upset when somebody uses the words bevel and facet interchangeably, watch something else. Okay, field trip to the downtown Macon, Georgia loft of my friend Katie Whiststone.
I am a recovering chef. I went to Le Cordon Bleu and I have a degree in baking and pastry, and I used to teach cooking classes.
So as Katie explains it, keeping your knife sharp involves 2 distinct activities: sharpening and honing. Honing is the act of keeping your cutting blade straight. That's what the honing steel is for.
If you think about the edge of a knife as being microscopically, it's serrated, tiny little teeth, and as you're using it, you're going to either knock the teeth off or you're going to bend them over. A steel will straighten them back up, but if you've knocked that tooth off, you need to put it back on.
And you do that by removing metal. You grind off the old dead edge and then you cut a new one from the stub underneath. Katie is a classically trained chef, so she uses a whetstone like a boss.
Now, that's not saying that you need to have one and need to know how to use it if you're a home cook. Those that go and you just run your knife through it, those will work just fine too.
She's talking about one of these. This is option number 2, but let's start with the cheapest option, a manual pull-through sharpener. This option, option 1, is what I used for many years. Inside those slits are little abrasive spinning discs. You simply apply some pressure and drag your knife over those wheels. The instructions say to push it back and forth with a sawing motion. That never works for me. It always catches when I push, so I just pull. What should you look for in one of these? Well, it depends what kind of knife you have. Most chef's knives can be readily categorized as either Japanese/Asian style or German/European style. The most obvious difference between them being the presence of a bolster here on the European style knife. A little bit less obvious is a difference in the angle of the blade. An Asian style blade has a slightly narrower cutting angle, about 15 degrees usually. European style blades traditionally are more like 20 degrees. The wider the blade angle, the more the blade will act like a wedge or a hatchet or an axe. It'll kind of cut into things and then it'll split them apart. I probably shouldn't have done that on the concrete. The angle on these is fixed, so you want to use a sharpener that matches the style of knife that you have. I normally use an Asian style knife, so I have this Asian style sharpener. Complicating matters is the fact that many European style knife makers have been moving to a narrower angle lately. This is because we consumers perceive those narrow angles to be sharper, even though technically it's a little more complicated than that. Anyway, apparently 15 degrees is becoming the industry standard across the board, so consult your manufacturer's instructions, try to figure out what kind of angle your knife was designed to hold, and buy a sharpener to match. I would highly recommend buying a multi-stage sharpener. They basically go from coarse to fine. You pull through the first stage to really cut the new edge, and then you pull through the subsequent stages to refine that edge. These work so much better than the single stage ones, and a lot of times you can get away with only using the upper stages, which remove less material and therefore lengthen the life of your knife. These things work. Here's me trying the old paper test before I sharpened, and here I am after, and I'm not very good at this, but hey, there it goes. Downsides? Well, I'm sure this isn't the sharpest edge possible, and it's impossible to apply even pressure the entire way, so you end up getting something that's a little bit uneven. And all pull-through sharpeners take off a lot of material, which shortens the life of your knife. That's particularly a problem with European-style knives because you can't grind down the bolster part here on one of those pull-through sharpeners, which means that you're gradually going to wear away this part here, and you're going to develop a protrusion down here that's going to get in the way. And let me clarify something. This is a contemporary Asian-style knife, meaning that it slopes down to an edge on both sides. It's symmetrical. This traditional Asian-style knife that Katie has is single-beveled, meaning it only slopes down on one side. Those knives are crazy sharp, great for fish, but you cannot sharpen them on one of these because they cut on both sides these. You can sharpen single-bevel knives on this, which is option number 2, which we will discuss momentarily. Quick tangent. One of the ways in which my life has gotten very strange lately is I now have people all over the world asking me why I apparently have such lovely skin even though I'm rapidly careening toward midlife. Well, the answer is I have a 3-step skincare regimen. Step 1 is be Italian. Step 2 is stand in front of softbox lights at all times. Step 3 is use Harry's, the sponsor of this video. I've been a Harry's customer for many years since they were sponsoring a podcast I liked, and I thought, you know, I need to find a better razor and I want to support this podcast, so I'll try Harry's, and I've never gone back. My facial hair is weird, it grows very slowly, it's very hard to shave it without cutting myself, and Harry's razors are the first ones I could ever afford that really could do the job. Razors are like knives, it's the dull ones that are going to cut you because you're forcing it. About 6 years ago, Harry's founders, Jeff and Andy, were sick of overpaying for over-designed razors, so they raised some money and they bought a razor factory in Germany. As we've discussed, the Germans know from sharp things. And these razors are like great chef's knives. They're beautifully crafted, the handles are weighted and they feel great in your hand, and they're shockingly inexpensive. Blade refills start at just $2. And because you watch me, you can get a whole Harry's starter kit like this one for just $3. That's crazy. Just go to harrys.com/AdamR. That's down in the description. Click on that link and get your $3 starter kit. Join me and 10 million other people who have found a better way to shave. When we shave. I only shave like once a week. That's not Harry's fault. Thank you, Harry's. Okay, home knife sharpening option number 2 is an electric pull-through sharpener. These are more expensive. You're going to pay at least $100 for a highly rated one. This one is the favorite of America's test kitchen. It's like the manual ones, except the abrasive wheels are motorized. There's 2 sides for each stage, 1 side for each side of the knife. That means this can sharpen single bevel knives. Do whatever your instructions say, but for this one you're supposed to pull it through alternating sides of stage 1 until you can feel a burr on it. That's a sharp edge that's bent over. When you pull your thumb across it here, it feels like a smooth corner. When you pull across it on this side, you can feel it scraping your skin. You're not going to cut yourself if you pull perpendicular to the blade. It's just like shaving. You proceed through the stages until, again, you can feel a burr until you get to the last stage, which straightens everything out, so no burr. That is crazy easy, that is crazy sharp. The angle is still fixed, this one at 15 degrees, Asian style, but you can take a 20-degree European knife and reform the edge to 15 degrees in one of these. It just takes a few more pulls. Downsides? Well, again, I imagine it's possible to get a knife sharper, but it's hard for me to imagine I would need anything sharper than this. The main downside is these things strip off a lot of material, which is going to shorten the life of your knife. Again, you can buy yourself some time by only using the upper stages for periodic maintenance. I believe my possessions should serve me, I should not serve them. So I'm going to buy a mid-price knife, I'm going to sharpen it whenever I want, down to a stub, and then one day I'm going to replace it. The electric sharpener is what I use most of the time these days. If you've got a crazy expensive knife that you want to pass to your grandchildren, then you got to graduate to option number 3, which is a whetstone. Learn how to use a whetstone like a boss, i.e. like Katie. You can get a good whetstone for less than $100. Katie puts down 3 little drops of sharpening oil and smooshes it around. She lays down the knife at a 35-degree angle, pushes down with her fingers, just a little bit of pressure, and she scrapes the edge across the surface in little tiny circles. She's gradually working the knife down the stone and over the stone to get the whole length of the knife. It's easy to neglect the tip. Some people sharpen in big, long swipes like that. Katie says she gets a better tip if she does the little circles. Then you wipe it down and you do the other side. This is an art that takes a lifetime to master, but it gives you incredible control, and perhaps most importantly, you can get a razor-sharp blade without removing much material. The 4th and final option? Pay somebody else to do it. Virtually every city has at least one guy like Neil Cowan. Yes, he knows he looks like Santa Claus. Yes, he wears a kilt, but it's going to cost you to find out what's underneath it. Anyway, wherever you live, odds are there's a guy like Neil nearby, and they're usually a little odd. Their workshops are usually built into a truck so they can drive to farmers markets, swap meets, gun shows, and they can just sharpen whatever people bring. Neil says about half his business is sharpening shears for haircutters and quilters and such, and the other half of his business is power tools, hunting knives, and kitchen knives. Neil uses a powered grinding wheel. The aluminum oxide one on the left there grinds the new edge. The leather one on the right there hones and polishes the edge. Now, why go see Neil if you can just buy a pull-through sharpener and use that at home?
When you do a pull-through, if you were able to use a microscope on it, you'd see a line where it got pulled through, going down like this. When you're cutting with that, you need as smooth an edge as you can because you want it to be able to push through the material that you're cutting. With those, it's kind of like putting little hooks on it, and it will cut, but it's going to take more effort and that type of thing to push through. What I do is I polish the edges, which reduces the drag coefficient, the friction on the edge of the knife, so when it goes through, it goes through.
I believe it because one time Neil was sharpening a knife, it kicked back at him and went right through his leather apron. He was okay, but that's why I will never use a belt grinder at home to sharpen my knives. One other reason to see Neil is that he can reshape that bolster on your European-style knife. But I think the main reason to go see him is that he's just a stone-cold professional.
I have people come up to me all the time and say, "What angle are you doing that at?" "The sharp angle."
That's not because he's unscientific, that's because he's developed an innate sense of what a knife needs. Now, however you've gotten your knife sharp, there's two things you're gonna need to do next. One is clean it. The other thing you gotta do is regularly hone your knife. That's what the steel is for. This gets those microscopic teeth Katie was talking about pointed up and straight again. You just pretend like you're trying to shave off a little sliver of the steel with your knife, a few times on each side. Katie goes under and out to get the opposite side. That's as opposed to going over and back to get it. This is what I do, and one of these days I'm gonna stab myself right in the face. Anyway, I try to hone every time I cook. I promised you I would tell you which of these 4 methods is the best. The best method for home knife sharpening is whichever method you're actually gonna do. Because for years, this was me. Man, this knife is dull. I should really sharpen it. But Alton Brown told me that I should only get my knives professionally sharpened. I should really do that. Look, I worship the ground Alton Brown walks on, but that episode of Good Eats kind of messed me up for a few years, at least until I got a good manual pull-through sharpener. The best sharpening method is whichever one you're actually gonna use. A lot of people think they're bad cooks when they just have bad knives. Get yourself a sharp knife, everything in here becomes so much easier.